serious, people of Reddit who have gone through or are going through cancer, what was the first sign that made you go to the doctor? I felt a pop in my back. It was actually a vertebra breaking. I had severe pain after, and was later diagnosed with multiple myeloma, a blood cancer. That was 5 years ago. And today I am in remission. My mom has had, yes, lots of back pain. She beat into remission 5 years ago. It came back about 18 months ago. She's now beaten it back to a 0-1 score. I had what I thought was a stroke and found out I have a glioblastoma. I was given 12-15 months and so far I've made it to the 15th month. Stay strong my dude. My grandma was given 6 months for her lymphoma around the time I was born. Nearly 29 years ago. I had coffee with her on Friday. My self-diagnosed IBS was actually a tumor and it hemorrhaged. Stage 4 rectal cancer. I beat that but it is in my liver now, too big to operate. I am living my best life while I can. Doctors won't listen to my concern for this. I'm a woman. They send me to the gyno to get shamed for not using birth control. I feel like I keep complaining of stomach issues and they won't f***ing do anything. I had a persistent pain in the middle of my sternum. Doctors thought it was costochondritis, essentially just inflammation of a joint. I stopped working out and lifting heavy things for 3 months but it didn't go away. Eventually I started having night sweats and random aches. After I fractured my hip, I got an MRI and biopsy and they diagnosed me with stage IV non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I got chemo and I've been in remission for 5 years. Edit. I'm seeing a lot of people describing a similar chest pain and getting scared. Not all chest pain is cancer and not all cancer is chest pain. I felt the pain in my chest because my tumor happened to be growing there. It could just as easily have grown somewhere else. And my story might have started with describing a persistent pain in the middle of my shin. If you're worried about something, talk to your doctor. Sir. Unintended weight loss or finding blood where you normally wouldn't. Get yourself to a doctor. My dad went to the ER after a big bump had formed on his neck overnight. He was prescribed severe rash medication but went back after nothing had worked. Everyone, even the doctors, thought it had been an allergic reaction or some kind of rash, but after testing for other causes, they found that he had Hodgkin's lymphoma and a 6-inch mass in his chest. It has been over a year. He has finished treatment, and the cancer shows no sign of returning. Edit. Thank you all so much for all the kind words and support. Seizures. I got seizures out of nowhere during the night. No history of seizures in my family. Got my head screened and they found what they thought to be a benign tumor. Anaplastic astrocytoma. Diagnosed 2 months before my 22nd birthday. Nearing the 5-year mark, though, with no evidence of it returning. My dad was in bed one night and said he felt like he was drowning, then began coughing up blood. My brother was 11 when he started experiencing symptoms. He started losing a lot of weight. And when he was playing soccer it looked like he was running through mud and couldn't keep up with everyone else. My parents took him to the pediatrician and they couldn't figure out what was wrong. One day, he woke up and couldn't stop throwing up. When he tried to run to the bathroom, he kept running into the door frame and couldn't walk straight. He said the lights were giving him a headache. We took him to the emergency room and they found that he had a brain tumor and had emergency brain surgery the next day. We were extremely lucky that they decided to do a CAT scan at the ER. Apparently they don't usually do them on kids. 2 brain surgeries and a year and a half of chemo later. And he is in remission now. On Christmas Eve 2018, my dad lost the ability to talk except for the phrase "this is crazy." Called paramedics because we thought he'd had a stroke. Got him to the hospital where the imaging showed a brain tumor on the outside edge of his brain. The swelling caused him to have a seizure. He was transferred to a bigger local hospital. They did full body scans because it's pretty rare to just have brain cancer, usually it's a secondary for another cancer site. We got lucky in that it was the sole spot. Went through a craniotomy and 5 rounds of high dose inpatient chemo. And he's 1 year in remission. Thanks for the awards. I was about 12 and I noticed a grey spot in my left eye, so I went to the eye doctor. It turned out to be retinoblastoma. And fast forward about 1 week I had my eye removed and started chemo. And now have a glass eye that has to get redone every 2 years until I was 16. Was it a small opaque spot or more of a translucent patch? If you remember, I have the faintest grey patch in my left eye's periphery and am on the verge of making an eye appointment. Lol. Super heavy periods that would last for 10 or more days. Got an IUD to help control bleeding. Actually hemorrhage so bad the IUD came out. Endometrial cancer. Huge tumor in my uterus. Ladies. It's not normal to need a tampon and pad at the same time. It's not normal to need to change them every 10 minutes or even every hour. An average period is 2-3 tablespoons. Just for reference. Sorry if TMI. Edited to add. Thank you for the well wishes. I am 1 year Ned, no evidence of disease. I was diagnosed at 40. I wish I could respond to everyone. The main takeaway is if something is not right, keep looking for answers in the right physician. Heavy periods do not usually mean cancer in premenopausal women. But there is no reason to suffer through them. Postmenopausal women should not experience any bleeding. 1 drop and you should go to the doctor right away. Funnily enough, it was a totally unrelated lump. Nope. That lump is fine. Just a lipoma. However, we found another lump in the corner of your x-ray and we need to biopsy it. My mum had something pretty close to this. Had a stroke. So lots of scans. One of them just caught the edge of something. Tennis ball sized mass in her chest. Whack. Turned out it wasn't anything particularly nasty, but it seemed crazy she never knew it was there. I was diagnosed at 43. For 2 years my gynecologist insisted that I get a mammogram as part of turning 40. I am very small chested, so I thought it was a complete waste of time. In February 2013 I promised my doctor that I would get a mammogram before my next annual appointment. I was diagnosed in February 2014. Stage 2 breast cancer. There was absolutely no signs or indication. No family history. All the way up to the pathology results from the biopsy. I thought it was all a complete waste of time and money. The results came back positive. My dad thought he had the flu and went to urgent care. By the end of the weekend he had started chemotherapy. He had acute myeloid leukemia. Made it 6 years though, so not bad. My 25-year-old sister was diagnosed with AML December. She is still going through treatment. It is actual hell. I am her match and we are hoping for a bone marrow transplant soon. My nana. She had very loose bowel movements, which had caused her to get dehydrated. Her levels for electrolytes were way out of normal range. She later found out that she had a cancerous mass on her ovaries. They caught it in time and she went through surgery and chemotherapy. Everything is fine now. My dad was acting strange. He looked disheveled somewhat and was telling the same stories. Well, he's 86. That can come with age. But he was also swerving on the road driving and he called me one day to take him to his doctor. Long story short. Stage 4 GBM. Brain cancer. Had surgery. Was okay for a couple of months but was gone a couple months after that. Good part was, had no pain and didn't suffer. Edit. Thank you. My dad woke up with extremely sharp pain in his abdomen. Worst pain you can imagine. Apparently, when you have a tumor blocking your intestinal tract. It wasn't until the pain actually woke him from deep sleep that he went to emergency room and they found it. He ignored any other pain up until then. Don't ignore your pain. It was a few years of absolute misery and now we miss him. I have 2 kids and let me tell you. I had a kidney stone and that was worse pain. Woke me up like a bolt out of sleep. I threw up from the pain, which I hadn't even when I had my kids. So, I can imagine the amount of pain he was in was probably more severe than even that. Sorry for your loss. I lost 2 parents to cancer also. I was fooling around in a mall as a kid. So my dad grabbed me by the neck to make me behave. He felt a lump on my neck and immediately began to get nervous. We went to the doctor the next day. Caught the cancer before it spread and was able to surgically remove it about a month later. Got super lucky. My sister noticed a small painful lump in her breast shortly after having her second child. Doctor diagnosed a blocked mammary gland. A couple weeks later it still wasn't gone. Again doc said blocked gland. Months later it's still not gone and she insists on getting a second opinion. Stage 3 breast cancer. Double mastectomy immediately followed by months of agonizing radiation and chemo only to find out it's now stage 4. She's been stable for a few years but now it's spreading again and we don't know how long we have her. Trying to be as positive as possible. Unbearable stomach pain in the middle of the night at 32. 24 hours later a 15cm cyst was found in my right ovary. 6 weeks later I was told it was ovarian cancer. 20 days later I had a complete hysterectomy. I'm 34. In menopause. Cured and very lucky. Thank you NHS. Well, I have a benign brain tumor which was diagnosed due to double vision and really bad headaches. I also have had a mild hand tremor for ages. I had radiotherapy 11 years ago and now I have been diagnosed with a low-grade parotid cancer which is a lump on my neck. Soon going to be having radiotherapy for that. Edit. The doctors have decided on proton beam therapy for me. My cat found my cancer and bugged me about it until I went to the doctor. My cat has always liked to lay on me and need part of my body with her paws. For 7 years it was random. Various parts of my body. Then for about 6 months she started to focus on one spot on my chest. At first I chalked it up to her wanting to be closer to my face. But after a couple months I noticed that the spot she was focused on had become very tender. Then I felt a small lump in that spot. Due to my relatively young age, it took me a couple of months to convince one of my doctors that it was a potential issue. But eventually I got tested and had a pretty giant tumor in that spot, plus other tumors elsewhere. Yes. Kitty got lots of cuddles, wet food, and greenies as a thank you. Back in 2017, I had been having back pain for several months. I finally went to urgent care one day when the pain was unbearable. They sent me immediately to the ER. I was admitted to the hospital and was diagnosed with stage IV breast cancer. It had spread to my liver and bones. My life completely changed that day. When faced with dying, I realized that I wanted to live. Before this, I had my suicide completely planned out. I feel like things happen for a reason and things work out the way they are supposed to. I'm a new person today. I spend every day fighting for a life that I wanted to throw away. Dry patch of skin on my forehead wouldn't stop scabbing and then bleeding. Decided that was because I couldn't stop picking it. Ignored it for 5 years because I'm 1, that afraid of doctors and 2, that incredibly stupid. Decided to leave it alone for 10 days and let it heal. It didn't. Finally got sick of worrying about it being basal cell carcinoma and went and got diagnosed. Basal cell carcinoma. It was dealt with pretty easily but don't be like me. I was young and thought I was immortal. That weird scaly patch on my scalp. Right along my hairline. Must have been some sort of infection or weird pimple. It was only when it started to burn constantly and give off a prickly feeling did I go to the doc and find it was skin cancer. My mom found out she has cancer a week ago. At first she felt pain in her armpit and naturally she did some research and found out that the people who have pain in the same spot have cancer. However, I didn't give it much thought as every cancer diagnosis is different. The next day she went to the doctor. Turns out it's a tumor. The week after she tested the tumor to see if it's cancerous and sadly it was. Tomorrow the doctor will tell her the plan for recovery. Please pray for her fast recovery. Edit. Thank you everyone for the support. I lost my dad to cancer 2 years ago when I was 12. Thanks for all of your prayers. I really hope my mom can recover through this. My head and neck area became very swollen. At first I thought I was just getting fat. So I worked out a lot and ate better. This did not help. I also went to a local clinic and they thought it might be an allergic reaction and gave me steroids, which also didn't help. The thing that finally made me go to the emergency room and not leave until I had an answer is that I started to develop unexplained bruises on my chest. Turns out I had a huge tumor in my chest which had grown around my heart and was compressing the superior vena cava so blood couldn't flow back down from my head. Not great. The good news is that it turned out to be very treatable and I've been cancer free for 11 years now. Most of the patients I've seen had some weird gradual symptom onset that they either ignored or just assumed was normal, or at least they're normal. Fatigue despite not changing much in their life. Weight loss that was attributed to I'm never really hungry anyways. Weird headaches. Changing bowel habits. Pencil thin stool. Blood in stool. etc. Moral of the story is don't ignore chronic symptoms. Please see your doc. I was in a drum line in middle school and we used to do this thing with the drumsticks to sting one another. This kid got me real good on my shoulder blade. And it caused an irritated growth. Doctor told us that it wouldn't go away on its own and would have to be removed. While in surgery to have it biopsy, my mom pointed out another bump on my back and asked the surgeon if it was the same thing. He replied no, and that it was fine. My mom insisted, asking him to remove it just in case so we wouldn't have to come back, and he did. The second biopsy got infected and I had to go on antibiotics. Unknown at the time. The antibiotic prescribed to me I was allergic to, which did not have a good result. Got a call back for a results appointment that just happened to be on my 14th birthday. The surgeon never looked at me or said happy birthday. He just read the results and said sorry before leaving. It was scale 4 malignant melanoma. My dad had a nipple pulling and that he knew about for several months before mentioning to anyone. He now thinks it may have been a year before he actually mentioned it to my mom, who demanded he see a doctor about it immediately. He was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. After chemo, a double mastectomy, and radiation. He is in remission. I would be remiss if I didn't include this on his behalf. Male breast cancer is not as uncommon as you think it is. Pay attention to any changes in your body and get yourself checked out. Severe pain. I was 12 years old and woke up screaming and crying from the pain. Swiftly passed out right after. It felt like a knife had stabbed into my side and was just twisting over and over again. I had already had cancer once before, so my family took me to get an MRI right after I went to school. And they saw a stomach tumor and immediately had me go to the hospital to have it surgically removed. A lump in my boob I found accidentally in the shower. Nothing else. Just the lump. I was fortunate I found it. I was in my early 30s and breastfeeding my second child. Statistically it shouldn't have been me. I'm 5 years from diagnosis and my current status is NED, no evidence of disease, which is the best you can hope for. Check your boobs. Do it regularly. And go to UDR if you find anything you aren't sure about. I turned my head and noticed a giant lump on my neck in the mirror. It didn't hurt at all. And I hadn't noticed it before. I went to my doctor the next day and bam. Lymphoma. That was 6 years ago. So now I'm officially considered cured. Close bracket. I started having seizures. At first they were small, lone saw a random smell and really strong deja vu. And then I started having tonic-clonic seizures a year later. The one nice thing is that among growths in the brain, it is the slower growing ones that are more likely to cause seizures, so at least there's that. I was rubbing my thigh with my hands after exercise and I felt a hard, painless lump the size of a big jelly bean about 5 centimeters deep under my skin. I felt around in the same spot on the opposite leg and didn't find another one. So I went to the doctor. A bunch of scans later, I was diagnosed with myxoid sarcoma. It turned out to be a misdiagnosis as the tumor ended up being benign. But I still needed surgery and the nerves in my leg got FK'd up. TLDR. If something about your body feels off, get it checked out. If my tumor had been cancer, my prognosis still would have been very good because I noticed it when it was still small. Had a friend who pulled her back. Did it camping. She just couldn't pinpoint exactly how or when. She dealt with it for a month and finally after Thanksgiving decided to go to the doctor to see if they could help. Pancreatic cancer. She passed away 45 days later. Fast forward 10 years. My sister's boyfriend pulled his back. He did pool and pest control work, so he figured he just lifted wrong. After a few weeks I reminded my sister of our friend and pancreatic cancer. She finally convinced him to go get it looked at. He passed away a little less than 3 months later. I had abnormal small amounts of bleeding after intercourses. Went for a pap smear. Do it once a year. But went in earlier because of symptom. Turned out I had early stage of cervical cancer. After few surgeries later. With one ovary removal. Partial cervix removal and lump nodes out. I am fine. I had a white patch on the left side of my tongue. I do not smoke or chew tobacco. As soon as the hygienist saw it and I saw her face, I knew it was trouble. It was cancer and something I have to monitor all the time now. Every sore on my tongue or in my mouth is a cause for concern. Had one biopsy and 2 surgeries to remove it all. No chemo or radiation. Downside was the spots kept coming back. Hence the 2 surgeries. THC and CBD oil was recommended to me. That was 2 years ago and I haven't had a spot since. Yay. 2 of my friends. Both of their partners had huge appetites. Built like rugby players. Loads of energy. Always on the go. They both had a sudden loss of appetite. Became really lethargic and didn't poop for more than 7 days. Bowel cancer. Both died within 6 months of diagnosis. If something is out of the ordinary, don't ignore it thinking it'll go away. Get yourself checked out. That's what the doctor is there for.